I was working with this dad and his son, and in this real intense moment, I checked into my body and I realized I was stressed. As soon as I realized that, I took a deep breath, I slowed down what was happening. I relaxed my body, and I realized at that moment that I was a catalyst to creating the environment for parents in relationships to their children. So that if I truly wanted to create more regulation, more safety, more love, and more understanding, I had to first understand my own fear reactions, my own stress reactions, my own overwhelm. And so that led me to understanding the importance of helping parents understand their stress and their fear and their overwhelm, which those blueprints occurred before the child ever came along. And so then what happens is the child comes into the home, starts having these behavior issues. The parents get stressed. They're getting stressed back into their original blueprints, to their state level of memory. And that's what they're reacting from. And they think it's about the kid, but it's not about the kid. It's actually about the fact that they're getting overwhelmed. So my work is about helping parents understand themselves at a deeper level, specifically understanding the impact of stress and fear and trauma in their own lives so that they can then understand their children in a deeper way.
I'm Rachel Green, divorce mediator and collaborative attorney. Join me as I chat about everything from smoothly navigating your way through divorce to prenups, all the while keeping the kids in mind. Hi, thanks for joining us on Keep the Kids in Mind. Today, I am really looking forward to having a conversation with Bryan Post. He is a renowned child behavior expert, adoptive parent, and creator of the Fear to Love method, a relationship-based approach that has helped families around the world better understand and respond to trauma-driven behaviors. For more than 25 years, he has taught parents, caregivers, and professionals how to move from fear-based reactions to connection-based responses, creating lasting healing and stronger relationships. Bryan, your work sounds so interesting. I really am looking forward to talking to you this morning.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm excited to be here with you as well.
So just to start, can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you came to be working with people on healing the whole way that they relate to people? It sounds like you're really having a meaningful impact in changing people's patterns. And I'm wondering how you ended up here.
Well, it was quite a journey, and I have to always start with, there's really two parts of the journey. There's my journey and my sister's journey. We weren't biological, we were both adopted. But I have to go all the way back from conception, because my biological mother became pregnant with me out of wedlock. She was married. Her husband was in Germany. He was in the military. She didn't think he was coming back. She fell in love with my father and she got pregnant. But then my father went across town and got one of their friends pregnant, which broke my mom's heart. So my mom knew she didn't want to be a single mom raising 4 kids, because I have 3 half siblings. She didn't want to be a single mom raising 4 children in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So years ago in the 60s, I believe Merle Haggard wrote a song called Okie from Muskogee. Right. And I always tell people that's who he's he's referring to. And so she realized that she didn't want to be a single mom. So she called her husband, told him that she was pregnant. He said, well, you got to get an abortion. And she said, okay, but he was in Germany. And so when I found her 37 years later, the first thing she said to me is, well, I need to call you back. After she said, how'd you get my number? She said, I need to call you back. She said, I'll call you back tomorrow. I said, that's fantastic. I don't want anything. I'm not a crackhead or anything. We hung up, and then 30 minutes later, she called me back. She said, you're right, baby. I'm your mom. I've been praying for you every single night. And a couple weeks later, I arranged to go meet her, my adoptive mom, who I refer to as my mom. We went to meet her and her husband. She was still married to the same man. And that's what she said. She said, I had to tell my husband, because the only 2 people that knew I existed were my mom and my Aunt Gloria, who has since passed away. That's my mother's oldest mom.
Your biological dad didn't know that she had?
No, my biological dad. Well, he knew I was alive, but he couldn't find me at that age because she had gotten mad at him and changed my last name. Oh. And so he was only 18 years old. I found him 2 weeks after I found her. Oh, and wow. So yeah, it was quite a great experience. Yeah. But my biological mom's husband, she was still married to the same man. He was the first one out the door. came and gave me a big hug and said, "I'm so sorry. I just couldn't carry another man's burden." And I said, I'm grateful for just having my life and being here. And that was, we
Very
have a
gracious of
nice
you.
relationship.
Yeah, that's very gracious of you.
Yeah, and
I
and
mean, I
I
guess you went through your own journey, like you were ready to find her when you found her, and like had worked
yeah, and that
with
was
your
a
husband.
that was a probably I was 37, so that actually started when I was 21 years old,
Oh
just
wow.
kind of dabbling and looking, and then getting busy, and so that's his own story in and of itself.
Yeah.
The significance is that my bio mom said, and her name's Wilma. She said, I always loved being pregnant. She
Oh,
said, I ate the right foods. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I got exercise. She said, I just loved being pregnant. And I just knew intuitively as a mental health professional, early in my career, that I'd had a good in utero experience. And I always tell
mm,
people, I'm always, it's all inevitably, it's always the child that brings me into a family's home or into them into the fear to love universe. And I always like to challenge parents to examine their birth story, because as early as the fourth week after conception, we start to develop the ability to hear. By the second trimester, the fetus is already processing psychologically. So you're receiving all that energy from the bio mom during those 9 months. And Nadine Burke Harris, who wrote The Deepest Well, says that the human brain from conception to 1 year of age is developing 1 million neural connections per second. So,
wow.
so that growth is just explosive, and you are internalizing everything, and it's being stored in your state level of memory. So
That's
brain science
fascinating.
and
Hmm.
John Bowlby in the 50s and 60s said the first 3 years of our lives established the blueprints for all of our future social and emotional relationships.
I've heard
Well,
that about the first
yeah,
3 years of our lives, but I never really heard that much about the in utero experience. Like
yeah,
that's
it's
so fascinating that
critical.
they now know these things.
It's critical.
My
And
mother also loved being pregnant. I mean, it's so funny. I guess there are women like I did not love being pregnant. I was
yeah,
nauseous the whole 9 months with both my kids. But,
yeah,
my mother had 4 kids, and I think part of it is because she also loved being pregnant. So, like having a
absolutely.
calm, happy mother when you're developing, I just never thought about the effect that that has on a person.
Yes, those are forming the foundations for who we are in social and emotional relationships.
Yeah,
That first relationship with the bio mother forms the foundation for our ability to perceive safety and to perceive trust and to be able to show up in a co-regulated way.
that
So
makes sense. But I
we
just
can
never
regulate
thought about
stress.
that before. Yeah.
Yeah, so my because I said it's two sides of my story. My sister, on the other hand, was born to a single mother. She was 3 months premature. She weighed 3.5 pounds when she was born, and she spent the first
Maybe
3 months of her life in an
in the
incubator.
hospital. Right.
Yeah, so my adoptive parent, my mom said, when we got you, you were smiling. When we got your sister, she was crying. Well, and so I don't work with children by themselves. I always work with families, and I always start with the parents. So my parents, as loving and as amazing as they were, my dad passed away 19 years ago. They were always consistent, always predictable, always provided. They never drank, they never smoked. But both my parents were adults of alcoholics, were children of alcoholics.
Wow.
His father was killed in a bar. My mom's dad
Wow.
died in front of her when she was 9 years old at the kitchen table.
Oh
And
my.
then my dad went on to Vietnam and came back with severe post traumatic stress disorder.
Mhm.
So everything is great, Rachel, in a family until stress sets in.
Yeah.
So children who've experienced trauma, I define them as being stress sensitive and fearful.
Yeah.
Now, here's the linchpin. The linchpin is that because of my in utero experience, I could regulate stress more effectively. So the normal traditional approaches to parenting, the spanking, the grounding, the sending you to your room, all that, the yelling and fussing, because of behavior. I could experience something like that, and I could go into my room and I could recover. My sister, because of her early experience, she could not recover. So
Yeah.
she stayed stressed, which then stressed my parents because they were both the oldest. My mom was the oldest of a sibling group of 10, the oldest girl. My dad was the oldest boy of a sibling group of 9. So they
Wow.
were parentified. So they were hyper responsible. And so then what happens is you have these children who struggle. I actually had worse behavior problems than my sister, but my sister was emotionally stunted. So she
Mhm.
was emotionally and developmentally stunted. And you combine that with really hyper responsible parents, all the hitting and the yelling, because it takes 36 hours for high levels of cortisol to clear the brain and the body system. So when you have a particularly stressful event that happens in the life of a child who's already stress sensitive and fearful,
Right.
and
Or
that
a particularly
behavior.
sensitive child, which it sounds.
Yes. So
Yeah.
you think about the child who gets in trouble at school and then the teachers call the parents.
Right.
Then the child goes home and the parents are upset because, they're embarrassed, they're ashamed. They want their child to be the best. So all they know to do is to hit and to yell and take things away. So all that did was stress my sister out more, which kept her stunted even more. And we never made it 36 hours without there being some other incident.
Oh, so she always had that
She
cortisol
could
going
never
through her.
recover.
She could
She
never
could never
recover. She
recover.
could never calm down and feel
She could
safe.
never recover.
Oh.
And my parents stayed stressed. And so then I grew up in literally World War III.
Wow.
And that went on for the duration of my childhood, watching that experience. And I could go so far into that because when people ask me, how did I get started in this work? It started from the very beginning.
From the very
Yeah.
beginning. So you came out into the world feeling like I have to find a solution to this.
Well,
World
I didn't
War III that
even
I grew up
know.
in. Yeah.
Right? I didn't even know. I was just
Oh, you
unconscious.
didn't know that everybody didn't have that experience. Because
Yeah,
none of
no,
us know that, right? We all grow up thinking this is the world. And
absolutely.
everybody has the same experience. And it's only
Absolutely.
high school and college we start to talk to other people.
Yeah.
And go,
Yeah.
oh, my home was really different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that tells me a lot about how you found your way to this work.
Informs everything that I do.
How did your sister end up growing up? And
she left home when she was 15. She didn't run away. She left. She was tired of fighting with my parents, and they spanking at that time at 15 becomes a fight.
Yeah.
And my mom said, I was so stressed out with your sister one day because these were committed parents. They wanted the best for their child. But stress causes confusion, distorted thinking, suppresses the short-term memory. Einstein says if you continue to do the same thing and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity.
Right.
So if you think about 15 years of hitting and yelling at your child to try to get them to grow up and act more mature, which she could not. My mom said at one point, I wanted to hit her in the head with a hammer because that's what we do in our society.
Yeah.
In our society, if something doesn't work, we just do more of it because we're stressed. And so my sister left before she was 18. She was in and out of jail. Then she had a life of prison and jail and prison and jail. And she finally had a couple of years stint in prison. She came out. She was doing so much better. She had 3 children. My dad raised my oldest nephew. My youngest nephew and my niece were in a foster placement with one of my sister's friends. When her son, my nephew, was turning 7, she drove up for one of his birthday parties and she was driving home. She was just getting her life together. It was icy in Oklahoma. A semi-truck slid across the highway, hit her head on and killed her at 37.
Oh,
So she just as she was, I think she was 35. Just as she was beginning to get her life together, it was time for her to move on to the next lifetime.
Oh, that's very sad.
Yeah.
So she never really found peace.
No, she was getting close. She was getting close. And it just wasn't meant to be. It was, I believe that it was one thing for my life to have been informed for this work. It was another thing for me to have gotten to experience her going through this process. So I have a dual lens. I have the lens of my own internal experience, and I have my lens of watching her and watching my parents struggle. And it changed. I could not have learned that in any bachelor's, master's, or doctorate program. That was purely informed because this is what God wired me to do. And so that's the way I approach it, So when I say to people about moving from a place of fear to a place of love, I grew up experiencing fear disguised as love. My parents did love us. And this is what I tell people in our society. Your parents do love you until they become stressed. As soon as they become stressed, then they move into fear. But the problem in our society is that we experience fear disguised as love. So when your parents say, I'm hitting you, or I'm yelling you, or I'm taking this away, or I'm threatening you because I love you, that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with fear. And that's conditioning. And
But
the problem,
it's also anger. Like anger gets mushed into all of that because
oh,
like
anger
we
is a
don't
protective
allow,
mechanism.
especially men are not allowed to feel fear. You know, it's too
Anger is a
vulnerable.
protective mechanism, right?
Anger, exactly.
Anger protects you from your fear.
That's right. That's right. So then it comes out as spanking or
Yes.
yelling, and it's really fear underlying that. But it comes
Yes.
out as anger. Yeah. So how did you end up working with families, and can you tell me a little about your work with families?
Sure.
Like
I
what
started
tools,
really early.
what tools you give people that help them?
Yeah. I started really early, and that was a great process of kind of evolution and development. I started as a social worker at 21 years old. I'm 53. So I've been doing this my entire professional life. And I had the good fortune, once I got into therapy, I had the good fortune to have some great mentors. I studied with a psychiatrist for a few years, traveling all around the country, working very intensively with families. And then I started questioning, and that's another, benefit of adoption is a lot of adopted children have problems with authority. I had problems with authority. I never just took anyone's answer at face value. And so it led me to continue to question and study and research. And then I one day I really came into the fear to love method by working with a dad and his son. It was a young couple had adopted a young man from a juvenile detention center in Russia at 13. So who knows what they were thinking, right? But I was working with this dad and his son, and I realized in this real intense moment, I checked into my body and I realized I was stressed. As soon as I realized that, I took a deep breath, I slowed down what was happening. I relaxed my body, and I realized at that moment that I was a catalyst to creating the environment for parents in relationships to their children. So that if I truly wanted to create more regulation, more safety, more love, and more understanding, I had to first understand my own fear reactions, my own stress reactions, my own overwhelm. And so that led me to understanding the importance of helping parents understand their stress and their fear and their overwhelm, which those blueprints occurred before the child ever came along.
Right.
And so then what happens is the child comes into the home, starts having these behavior issues. The parents get stressed. They're getting stressed back into their original blueprints, to their state level of memory. And that's what they're reacting from. And they think it's about the kid, but it's not about the kid. It's actually about the fact that they're getting overwhelmed. So my work is about helping parents understand themselves at a deeper level, specifically understanding the impact of stress and fear and trauma in their own lives.
Yeah.
So that they can then understand their children in a deeper way.
Right. So then things happen with the child that triggers their hurt from their childhood.
And they're not
aware of it. Right. And then they're repeating the patterns.
Yes.
And you're helping them become aware of it so that they maybe have a choice.
Yes. So they can understand how to regulate, how to breathe. The most impactful thing that I try to teach every human being that I come in contact with is the most impactful thing that you can do is learn how to breathe in the midst of stress.
In the midst of stress. Okay, let's stop right now and just take a deep breath.
Yes, great.
I say that to people all the time when they call me because they're going through their own family transitions, and I say, take deep breaths. We'll do this at your own time. You don't have to know all the answers today. You don't have to get everything done this week. Take a deep breath. Yeah.
Take a deep breath. Nobody's going to die.
Yeah.
No one's going to die. Your brainstem, your amygdala, your limbic system is putting you in survival. In a moment, your limbic system switches into survival. All of the trillions of cells in your body constrict into survival, and all of that energy is fear-based energy. Yeah. And so your amygdala is, quite frankly, in any given moment, making you think that you're going to die. And that's why you need to control, suppress, and change.
Yeah.
You're not going to die. Take a deep breath. Breathe, slow down, soften. Joseph Ledoux is a New York University neuroscientist. He says in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted, and our short-term memory is suppressed. The moment we become stressed, we are no longer thinking clearly. Cortisol and adrenaline is overwhelming our body-mind system. It's shutting down our hippocampus so we can't remember. And then that's why when Einstein said, insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result, because when we are stressed, we're not thinking clearly and we can't remember. That's why parents continue to yell and spank and hit and consequence, because in the moment of their own stress, they think they're focused on their child's behavior, but it's actually reflected in their same stress. They are not thinking clearly and cannot remember that what they did yesterday and the day before did not work.
Right.
So don't keep doing it. But that's what we do in our society. We are a stressed out, overwhelmed society that continues to do the same thing.
So you work with families and that you start with the parents.
Yes.
And then do you work with the kids? Does it depend how old they are? Or
that's a great question. Actually, the only time I will really work with a child one-on-one is when they are a late stage adolescent. So at 15, 16, because a lot of times what I experience is that the emotional maturity of the child and the parent start to hit the same level. So a lot of times at that age,
really? That's shocking.
100%. I have to start helping. I have to start supporting the adolescent in navigating the immaturity of the parent. Sometimes as much as I have to help the parent navigate the immaturity of the adolescent. And what we know about the adolescent brain is that they actually have every neuroscientific justification for behaving the way that they do, because their brain's in a pruning stage and it's not even fully developed until they're 23 to 25 years old.
26, I heard.
Yes, for boys, yeah, absolutely. And so I focus the majority of my time working with parents on their deeper understanding so they can regulate themselves in the face of stress, so that when their children are having behavior problems, the parents can learn to breathe and slow down and soften, connect to the child's history, connect to a deeper understanding of who their child is, maybe enter into a grief stage with their child, so that instead of just seeing the behavior as something bad, they're seeing it as a communication for stress and sometimes trauma. And they're able to hold a space to help their child to start working through that energy release, because I believe that negative behaviors demonstrated by children are an attempt for them to heal. They're an attempt for them to discharge trauma energy. And if we can't hold space and presence for them, then we end up suppressing the very system that is naturally set up to create healing. And so I have to have parents become more mindful. I have to have them become more loving and less fearful. I have to help parents become really love revolutionaries in realizing that fear is their biggest enemy, because fear will interrupt a relationship and cause the relationship to become stressed. We have to be able to return to love, and that starts with stress. And let me say, Rachel, it's not just love, some woo-woo thing Bryan's talking about. It's actually releasing the hormone oxytocin. Oxytocin is the brain's anti-stress hormone, also known as the love hormone. And so when a parent is stressed, cortisol takes over and oxytocin gets shut down. And so then if the child's stressed, the parent can't help the child to co-regulate to turn on their oxytocin, because oxytocin is a learned response.
And then they're dealing with the child out of fear instead of out of love.
That's right. And then the cycle's repeating itself. And here's the challenging thing, because I always say everything I say is simple. It's just not easy, because this is informed from generations of parenting. This didn't just show up today.
It's simple but not easy. I like
Yes,
the
it's simple
distinction.
but not easy. It's sometimes it's the most difficult thing you'll ever do because you're programmed. Your blueprints come from generations.
Right.
These and a lot of times it's informed by generations of trauma.
Yeah.
If I go back in my lineage by just 3 generations, I'm in slavery.
Right.
My great grandfather still had whip marks on his back from slavery. There's
Yeah.
nothing but trauma there, and that
Right.
trauma informs the DNA.
We're all impacted by epigenetics.
The study of how the DNA is influenced by stress is what it comes down to, and how that gets passed down
Right.
and is inherited throughout the generations.
Right. My daughter was talking about the impact on being a Jewish great grandchild of like
Oh,
people who survived
yes.
the Holocaust. It's
Yes.
and
Yes.
how that is passed down through the generations, and definitely slavery is another horror that
Let
our
me
forebears endured, and the fallout is still with us.
Oh, it is so deeply ingrained. And let me tell you one of the most predominant ways it is. It's through crying. We have been trained and conditioned to believe that crying is not okay. But if you go back to the Holocaust, if you go back to slavery, there were times when a mother would have to suffocate her infant child to keep the child from crying,
Right.
so the others would not get discovered. Can you imagine the intensity for a mother to have to do that? And think about how many repetitions and experiences. That is like the most extreme form of trauma, Rachel.
Yeah.
And that we carry that.
Yeah.
That's 3 generations ago.
Right.
There's epigenetics that says that the DNA can be impacted. Trauma can impact the DNA for up to 15 generations. Doctors label it, let them cry it out, and sleep train your children. But really, they're just perpetuating generational trauma, and they don't know it.
Yeah.
And it shows up. It's pervasive in our society. And then one of the key components of healing, as well as working through trauma, is grief.
Yeah.
Well, we've learned that crying is not okay. Guess what we don't permit one another to do? Grieve.
Process the grief and feel it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So grief is one of the most unexpressed grief is one of the most pervasive traumatic experiences that occurs in our society.
What you're saying is making me think about my own clients who are going through, their own stress with divorcing, separating, the pain of somebody who you've had as an intimate partner for years suddenly rejecting you, and dealing with that grief and that hurt and pain, to how to express that and feel the grief, because they have to feel the grief. They have to mourn the loss of the relationship and of the future they thought they were going to have, and like reprogram themselves to, you can't plan your future until you really fully accept that this is where your life is going and this is your future. And you're just reminding me of how much pain people have. And I'm an attorney by training, not a psychologist, although I had my own years of, therapy, and I certainly had a lot of informal training in child development and emotions. But there could be a tendency for people to come in and go, all right, let's get this done. What do we have to talk about? What do we have to decide? And again, deep breaths, slow it down.
Yeah.
Let's process. If we don't process the feelings, we're not going to resolve anything.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's called being an emotionally intelligent attorney.
Yeah. We all have our pain, and
it's
the pain that you and I experienced as children and growing up, and that's part of what leads us to want to help other people cope with their pain.
Sure.
But you have to be in touch with that.
Yeah, you have to be able to honor it and be aware of it. And unfortunately, I feel like this is a real challenge of mental health.
Yeah.
Our mental health systems have become so cognitive behavioral, so focused on the behavior of the child, that we have forgotten that therapy starts with us.
Yeah.
We are the primary source of regulation for our clients.
Right.
And so if we've not delved into our own self-analysis and mindfulness and explored our own traumas, then we have no idea of how the energy from a client is triggering our energy from our past experiences, and then how that's informing everything that we do. And I believe that that's why mental health professionals are so quick to go work with kids, and they don't want to work with the family, and they don't want to work with the parents. It's so much safer to work with someone's child, but you're doing that child a disservice if you discount the role of the parents in the family and ultimately in the healing. And so I just, I was very fortunate to have stepped into that understanding 25 years ago. And so I can't imagine working any other way, like I said, unless it's an older adolescent.
And are older adolescents able to help their parents to change the patterns, or are they just working on themselves?
No, they're able. The responsibility isn't for them to help their parents, but the responsibility is for them to gain enough insight into themselves to give those moments of high stress and tension a little bit of breathing room.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can help, like I have a 17-year-old client right now, if I can help her have a little bit of self-awareness before she flips her lid and goes off on her mom, it gives her mom a greater window of tolerance to have some self-reflection into her own reactions, so that she's not being too overwhelming to the adolescent. And so I'm just giving them all a little bit more space. And sometimes that's all we need, is a little bit more space to navigate the nuances of who we are and how they show up in relationships with the people that we love. It doesn't take long. You just have to change your lens and see the hurt baby.
Right. That's
the hurt baby hasn't gone away.
No.
The child has just gotten older and bigger, but the hurt baby's still there. And I try to tell parents that the behavior is not the problem. It's what's underneath the behavior that is the problem. A defense is a defense for a reason. A defense is not a child trying to attack you or trying to hurt you or trying to manipulate you. A defense is a child trying to protect themselves. So if you know that a defense is a child trying to protect themselves, then don't give them something to fight against.
Right.
Calm yourself down.
Oh my God.
And become a safe person. And slow down and help them slow down so that you can engage what's behind all the defense.
That's right. And then if you can create that safe space, then you get to the core of what's really happening.
There you go.
And it's the opposite of the impulse. The impulse is to fight back.
That's right. Of course, that's the amygdala. That's the fear receptor. Right. The reaction, which is emotional. It's unconscious. It's all fear-based. There's no thought involved. So that's why breathing, Bruce Lee says, the most important thing you can learn in life is to master the ability to remain calm. Breathing. Right. It all comes back to that. It's the only thing that gives us the opportunity to stay conscious and stay present and to stay tuned in and to realize we're not going to die. The world's not going to end. We just need to navigate through this little few moments of time, and then we move on.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, I feel like my brain is going it's just fascinating to talk to you. I really enjoyed our conversation this morning, and you're doing such important work. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much, and you as well. Okay. It takes a tribe.
Yes, it does. It does indeed.